Thank you, everybody, for joining us on Quantum Healing today. My name is Melanie, and today we have an amazing guest with us. He is a cosmic shamanic guide and channel. His name is Stephen Popiotek, and today we are going to discuss extraterrestrial beings or any type of interdimensional beings that might be interfering with our progression going forward during this time. But we will also be shining a light on the positive beings that are assisting us through this time as well. And we will deep dive further into what Stephen is best at. And so let's talk with Stephen now. How are you doing today?
Uh, it's good to see you again, Melanie. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's good to see
Yes,
you
and
again. Yeah, me and you met in Arizona some time ago, some years ago at
yeah,
Zoology Fest. And so we've just stayed connected since then. And I love our conversations and the things that we can talk about. So I love what you do, your work, what you have to offer. I've even had a couple of sessions with you, which I would like to brag about.
thank you.
So for anybody who's interested in more with Stephen, please connect with him. So let's talk about you, a little about what you do, and for those who don't know.
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely I definitely cover a lot of areas with the work I do. I mean, at the moment, I primarily do more individual sessions and I would say group channel meditation activations during new moon, full moons. I do have a record of teaching different workshops on several different like metaphysical topics from the Kabbalah to Egyptian mysticism, cosmic shamanism, um, conspiracy theories of what's going on with different technologies that from like specialty from like the Maya labs to SSP topics, um, planetary grid work, so ascension type of work. So there are a lot of areas with that, and it all does get incorporated with the work we do because even with the um, individual work on clients, I mean, I help clients tap into it's a bit of a combination. I call it cosmic shamanism, but it kind of covers a lot of range, which is one reason why I use the word cosmic. On a base level, I'm an angelic channel and also a galactic channel. So I work with different positive angels and galactic beings that come in to assist people, not just individually, but also collectively when we do larger planetary work. And during the personal process, again, there's a wide range of clients, so people need different things. So everything from past life integration with like soul retrieval, clearing out of old negative patterns that could be carried on or creating problems now. Um, big part of my specialty is working more with the galactic work. So, one thing we'll talk about today is different types of interferences that are going on collectively. And for me, like there's a lot of people that come in pretty much everybody coming in the past 2 years has had negative cords and implants from different like negative ET groups. I'll explain more later. So that becomes the first thing we have to kind of identify and clear. Um, and before we get into anything else, so to speak. And then usually we also go into past lives off world, not just human lifetimes, but for star seeds, of course, is more my favorite and more of my usual client anyway. I would say that I'd be drawn to this work. And then have more of like a niche for people that are have had military abduction, secret space program individuals as well. That gets more involved and more intense to kind of go layering in there. Um, and Do a lot of work with the sun as well. That was one of my original starting points over how many years ago now, like 30 years ago. Time flies by there. Um, and In the group work, new moon, full moon meditations, they're more like planetary healing work, but also it's ended up becoming especially the past year, a lot of deconstruction of negative geometric grids that various negative ET groups have been putting around the Earth that we keep going after with channeling more of the positive ETs to come in that want to bring more intervention and divine justice to the planet and help create more of a smoother way so we can get more of the love energy here, more of our positive connections rebuilt and amplified. So that's a little bit more of a roundabout kind of way to describe um, more the flavor there.
No, you're right. That is really a nutshell.
Yeah.
You're really right. That's just tip of the iceberg of what we can discuss and which direction we want to go. And I guess for you, since you are so connected to the planetary grid and different beings and what is happening, what's clearing, what do you see mainly right now that's being cleared on a collective level within our, I guess, it would be safe to say the collective blueprint and structure,
Mm. Hmm.
since we are connected. And how does that, how do you see that unfolding right now as we go and continue through this next evolutional process? Because it's not only just a physical war going on,
Sure.
but it's a spiritual battle, spiritual war. So there are many beings that are involved right now.
Yes. Yeah, I guess as a little precursor point, which something I was kind of reiterate in different shows, just because it's important to make people understand more the framework, right, of what's happening. And I would say back in 2022, in the beginning of 2022, a lot of our governments, globally, a lot of big governments and other organizations um, made updated contracts with different negative ET groups. And they basically updated their treaties and their trade deals and technological exchange programs to basically give them more permission to manipulate our history and to manipulate our timeline and to try to make it closer to a negative parallel reality that I refer to as Trinicon in some other interviews. It's a negative parallel reality where Atlantis didn't sink but was won by the dark side. And that's a whole kind of a separate thing, but it does interface. And as part of the updated treaties, they also gave these negative ET groups more permission to commodify humanity's consciousness. And hence, a few months after that, I started seeing it was more like in retrospect, because when I started seeing clients every day, all of a sudden, we never had issue before, coming in with energy cords and energy implants and their chakras and different points in a tree of life and different parts of the body. They were all coming from different negativity bases, as well as from um, certain Defense Department contractors and certain military bases that were hosting the different negativity groups. It made me question more and be like, okay, what is going on? All of a sudden, this is a whole new, the real epidemic is now this attempt to commodify people's bioenergy, and chi energy and elemental energy, soul peace energy, and use it for not good purposes to create more negative timelines, to try to feed these negative ET groups presence on the inner planes and outer planes, and also to try to engineer um, or make more possible certain negative timelines that they're trying to precipitate into our reality by harvesting our own ability to create, basically, and co-create and use it against us. So to me, it's really important that people take that awareness, because we certainly don't want to feed, any negative, like, storylines that they're trying to put us into their narrative. We're here to rewrite that narrative to create more of the positive ascended timeline. But it really is like the idea of like darkest before the dawn, going on, where all the crap is coming up, as well as all the shadow forces that have been around. Different ones are coming into, newer ones that I haven't seen in a long time. Same time, there's more help coming in, but there's a lot of attempt to block star people and humanity from really connecting to their galactic heritage the way that we could be if all these artificial veils weren't being put in play right now. And that goes into a deeper level of them controlling the narrative, both on a societal level, psychological level, political level, technological level, and more subtle energetic technologies that are also doing that. So it definitely is they're definitely pulling out everything they can from their toolkit of, trying to suppress the heart awakening and trying to disconnect people from their true heritage, and not just above in terms of star people, but the same thing is happening below, where they're trying to unground people from really feeling safe in their body and on the earth through a lot of the geoengineering and weather warfare technologies, not just by humans, but other ET groups are doing it as well, that are really trying to dislocate people's ability to be centered and grounded in the new energies that Gaia, Mother, Father Earth is trying to give us. And so it's trying to unground people from below and disconnect them from above. That's how you create this limbo, and then you try to steer people towards a certain agenda that they're co-creating in not a nice way. So that's an important precursor, because over the past year, even the public circles I do, because I also do smaller group circles where we tackle some more of the denser projects if we need to go after certain, just a little more hardcore work of counteracting certain technologies, and the higher guides need people to be kind of like the sentries at the gate, and to be able to welcome in some of our good teams to open up the gate in Gaia's castle, so that the positive armies of light can be called in and then help show them, hey, this is where we need, this is where it's like calling up the Galactic, 911 police force, and telling them where the emergency's at, and helping to open up the door so they can come in and take care of business. So, there is an aspect of that where we hold space both for our higher aspects of our own divinity to come in and our own lineages, and then from the teams, say from Andromeda, which are one of the groups that are coming in a lot to help us out, and we help because you have humans that are calling in the negative ETs. So you need to have positive humans calling in the positive ETs, because there is that free will thing, and there is that necessity for the, the invocation and the permission slip to be granted. And so, that's all important that people understand as a background. So basically so even in the public circles now, the past year, past 12 months, past 13 months, I would say, they've all turned into these like specialized sessions as well, where we have to address a different negative ET grid that's being put around the earth. And so literally, I'll know like a day or two before, usually sometimes earlier, like, okay, who's next up on the queue. So to make it fast forward relevant for the time of this recording, at least, right? We just had a new moon activation, which was, well, actually yesterday, because by the time this airs will be different, but on June 6th, we had the new moon in Gemini. And there's a group that we dealt with only the second time now collectively. In terms of my group, we dealt with them the first time in February, and they've also just started coming in more recently this year, in terms of their new activities. They're an aquatic humanoid group, and they're connected to the fish, the ancient Babylonian Sumerian fish humanoid deity, Dagon, D-A-G-O-N. People have written how this is what the mitre headpieces of the popes and the Vatican Church are wearing as the fish, so not just a symbol of Pisces, but also a symbol of that deity, which I do agree with that. From what I've seen, there were deals. Can't remember what I tracked remote viewed wise, but there was a certain century. I have to look at my notes in the future, where the Vatican did make a deal with this group, and but this Dagon group is not just coming in. Well, their actual homeworld is ironically in the constellation called the Southern Fish, which is Piscis Austrinius is actually their homeworld. They're in like a negative like 4D group, if using like the law of one terminology for like density on the negative side. But there's also a small contingency of that group that has come from the future. I don't remember if it was 2400s or 2600s. This was quite a while back that it came in, and they've done some time travel to try to give their group a little more of an edge, and which is a little disconcerting because we have enough time manipulation going on. We don't need fish people from the future trying to add more cat. It's like a bad B-rated movie. I'm like, what is this like? So anyway, so back in February we dealt with them where they were doing a process where they were trying to manipulate some of the gravity coming through the moon, like a gravity distortion technology, or like almost like using the moon as a negative magnifying lens to focus a gravity distortion field from Set's homeworld, because they were actually working to support a dark Orion group that was connected with that Egyptian god Set, or Sutek as his original Egyptian name, who is really the leader of some of the larger galactic empire structures. And we'll talk about him a little bit later. So this particular Dagon group, last night, though, we were working on them again because they had put a tetrahedron around the Earth that they were beaming out technology. They were using technology at 3 locations to represent the basic triangle. And so part of the process we worked through is we identified locations relatively. Sometimes we don't need to be exact, because I don't also want to get in too much trouble by saying always exact locations. So sometimes I'll be like, it's in like northeastern, and I'll mention a country and this and that sector, that's fine for the guides. They already know where it's at. So other times we will be more specific with like a military base if I get the green light for it, because I have enough harassment going on different levels. So sometimes if I over specify, I get more hits. Let's put it that way. So anyway, so last night we dealt with some spots they had in Indonesia, in Kansas, and in France, actually. And it looks like what creeped me out more was that the French government, or part of the French government, is in league with this group, and they actually genetically modified a new super soldier body to become a host vehicle for Dagon himself. Is now entered into a avatar body and is now more in a humanoid form, which I was like, this is new. This has not happened. So I'm like, that's really kind of creepy. And we saw during the group activation yesterday that they were plotting something that they wanted to create in 2026, some event on a bigger scale, and they want to use him as the kind of mediator savior figure to come in to be like, hey, I have the solution, so people could trust him as a new kind of leader. Meanwhile, he's like the dark leader of a negative ET group. So hopefully, we want to intercept some of those negative timelines, but we don't consent to all these shenanigans going on. So when we do the work like that, we have to focus in on the locations, and then we'll basically hold space for different positive ET groups that want to be called in to intervene to go after the technology there that needs to be destroyed, removed, deactivated. Sometimes they'll come in and they'll make arrests on a higher level against some of the negative ET groups. So there is some pretty intense things that come in during that process. But we also had to work on them because they were also clogging up a point right off the coast of the Big Island in Hawaii, which, if you remember Richard Hoagland days when he talked about the tetrahedron at the 19.5 degree latitude that would be formed around the Earth if you put a tetrahedron over it with the equator, and same thing on Mars where the pyramids on Mars was that he wrote a book about long ago. That's very accurate. And also Big Island is Hawaii is also connected to a bigger hypercube grid that is one of 16 sacred points that are part of a higher 4D cube of light that Gaia has been forming. So it's a powerful vortex. So I was a little surprised, but not really. I guess it came in last minute during it that the Dagon group put some technology off the coast there to really try to clog up some of the ancient Lemurian undersea vortexes there from properly flowing. And so he was trying to hijack and block one of the tetrahedral points there so that they could put in a dark tetrahedral to replace it, which deals with the fire element in the Platonic mystery schools. So they were trying to blend, and then he was trying to put negative energy into the Pacific Ocean to try to control the aquatic life forms there. And I was like, what is this, a bad Aquaman movie here? But it was so intense when I have a recorded of this stuff that he was doing. Like he was really trying to use technology from his home world and project it there like a loudspeaker to be like, I am like your new leader and God. So all of your animals here are like part of my dark magical cape, kind of thing. Like I am your king. And then he was trying to do that also in the Atlantic Ocean. We had to clear some stuff there, him messing with the Atlantean vortexes, and then he was trying to project an image of his throne room onto people's own personal temple spaces to be like subliminally trying to influence humanity through the ocean, like I am your new leader. And it's like, F you, no, you're not. But this is the type of thing people have to understand, that they're so gung-ho on their shadow on the dark side where they want to get a piece of the pie or try to see, it's like a dark gang trying to get a new turf, moving into an area, it's not, create a vacuum, and another group tries to get in there. It's like, no, we got to get all these idiots out of here. But anyway, so that one was a huge relief just last night when that tetrahedron got taken down. But there was a new beautiful energy coming in from the Indonesia location from an ancient vortex that connects to a planet of an Eridanus or Eridanus constellation. That's a constellation of the river. Like for the Egyptians, that was like the Nile River. There's two groups there I knew about already that were really beautiful and magical, but this was a new group. And it was, first I thought it was Poseidon energy coming in, but it was next level. It was more like Oceanus, like the god Oceanus. But I was seeing him more like grandfather of Poseidon, but he's kind of like a leader and embodiment of this higher galactic planet in that constellation of Eridanus that is like a beautiful like oceanic planet of higher beings where he holds space for like so many different oceanic planets where they want to send blessings. There's so many other planets that have oceans that are in alignment with divine love, but he really has the energy of like a Poseidon Oceanus figure. And I was like, oh my God. And these beautiful sea priestesses that were working with them, they were calling them just the what was their exact phrase? They were like the Starheart, which I'll explain a term for that. Starheart Infinity Gateway Priestesses of Oceanus Eridanus. Starheart Infinity Gateway Priestesses of Oceanus Eridanus. And they actually added the word I in there when they were doing it. So they were Starheart Infinity Gateway Priestesses of the Eye of Oceanus. And they were showing this beautiful crystal eye that was like a lens in that area in the old days that we were working on clearing out, because the Dagon group was trying to build their old base over that vortex to try to corrupt it several thousand years ago, and they were trying to reactivate it more recently. So part of the work is that it's also when we discover some of these locations where the facilities are, it's a lot of times they're built over sacred sites that had a positive allocation and previously that needs to be reinvoked, and so this pillar of light was coming up, and these higher light priestesses from Eridanus were coming in to say this is going to be one of many new pillars of light from Oceanus realm that wants to help Gaia's oceans evolve and be cleaned and help humanity. So that was really moving. Even just talking about them now, I start getting goosebumps. But they're one of the new group, literally just 24 hours ago, that wants to be called infinite. So that's a nice like counterbalance, to kick out these aquatic dictators. you know? uh, that's what I. So as you can see, it gets kind of involved when you start opening up the Pandora's box of discussion here.
Yeah, I really love that it can go in different direction. And so, I mean, the question is now is just what direction do you want to go in next? We could look at how these beings are, well, I guess that's another thing. We could look more into these beings, or we could look at the starseeds and light workers that are awakening right now and who have an attachment or DNA lineage to these beings, which I think is also important to point out, is because
Yes.
a lot of people might separate themselves from these beings, but we also have to realize that us starseeds, light workers, we all have the same DNA, just like being on Earth, you can't identify with just one lineage. I'm not just white or brown or black or yellow. You are a combination when you really
Yeah.
break it down and look at the DNA strand. And so in this way, I mean, we could really look at our connection with the star beings and how we're waking up, or I guess how they're waking us up as well. From what I understand, we are on this like time click, time clock, we're just ticking away, and there's this alarm that goes off with each and every single one of us at a certain point in time. And I think that's really important to recognize and to embrace within one another, because we're all on this path, and no matter how far we are ahead or how far we are behind, we're still helping one another in this time. And so maybe we can talk more about the connection with these beings and how we can even consider them family,
Mhm.
in a safe way as well.
Yeah, I would definitely say that that works on both sides of the fence a little bit there in terms of the heritage. I mean, one of the areas also that's come up a lot that I seems to be a specialty that comes up regularly, is to expand the idea of star seeds roles, not just here in the human body, but like seeing, because we're like a vector of completion oftentimes of some of the lineages that we started off with off world, and being of service by incarnating here on Earth, for example, uh, where this cosmic playground of light and dark is really converging and reaching an ultimate tone. Uh, um, there are certain rectifications in completions that are also important to kind of that I'm seeing, at least, that are part of a larger um, infiltration program by the light into the dark. And specifically by that, there'll be a certain amount of star people that I work on very regularly that will have not just their, say, for example, someone is from Andromeda, from Positive Planet Andromeda. So, but this principle applies to many groups, not just them. So they'll, at a certain point, because these groups are involved in the galactic wars that have gone on and off over very, very long spans of time, from our point of view, they've also needed to have certain star people volunteer to have an infiltration lifetime, so that they would be willing to, kind of like a deep cover, agent infiltrating a cartel or a gang, except in this case, you have to actually become, the bad guy. You can't just pretend it because they would spot you, all these ETs are
Yeah.
psychic.
Well, no, that's what we call an inside job. We're doing an inside job right now.
Exactly. So
We're
this
talking
would be like a version of I was thinking more of like galactic inside jobs, where, say, for example, you're Andromedan, and then they're like, okay, we need a certain amount of star people to infiltrate the reptilians, certain number of star people to infiltrate the Set group, certain people to infiltrate the Dagon group. They'll go through the whole list of who's who in the galactic dark neighborhood. and but so part of the reason is also like to try to bring light to that collective on a very fundamental level, even if you have the dark wardrobe on. When you're completing that life, the people there realize, hey, you actually are of light and love. So the idea is almost like popping a ray of sunlight through a dense cloud so we can reach the surface and remind people on the surface, hey, you're not just have to, you don't have to be like, the sun didn't leave you. Even if you haven't seen it in so many years, it's still there. It's just you have clouds blocking it. So it's kind of like angelic light coming into a very dense underworld area to help remind those in dark, hey, you don't have to be an asshole for eternity. You can actually come back to light and love. So, and the same also on a more grounded level, to teach that soul, balancing out the duality, and also so that that group that they originally came from can understand more of the methodology, technology, tactics, blueprints, information, mission specifics of everything that person went through in that infiltration lifetime, so that that can be passed on then to various light councils in these positivity groups, so that they could take action and initiative on that intel, and that gives them also upper leverage hand to, because a lot of these wars are fraught across time and space, especially, not just in space and time. So it's important that you have people at different points in time and space that are able to be the light Trojan horses into the dark collectives. And then when we do that kind of completion and pass the information on, there's a process where, when I'm working with people like that as a client, there's a process where we have to go into part of the subconscious in a very specific way to kind of clear and feng shui that lifetime. And then there'll usually be a symbol like a flash drive or an external hard drive symbol that represents a copy of all the information that that person has gathered from that dark infiltration lifetime. And then that person's teams will come in, say if they were Andromeda, and they'll come in a specific kind of interface way so that we can pass on that information. So I'm finding that this is a regular trend now, where there's like a completion of that long mission assignment, and maybe because the vectors or like the nodal points of the wave of those groups are hitting here on the earth on this dimension, it becomes more relevant to complete the task here, so that way the light can then take the next step further. So that's one thing that's kind of another spin that's not a usual spin, in terms of starseed discussion, but I find it very important because a lot of times they first come to me because they're getting attacked by different negativity groups, and the first thing that these negative ETs are looking for is anybody that has unresolved contracts or open contracts with them from past lives such as this, because they think that they can either use them to convert back to the dark, like, like Star Wars type scenario, like trying to convert Luke back to the dark side or to the dark side. Or at the very least, they're trying to use people as like proxies to enhance their presence here, like a Trojan horse on the negative side. So, or try to sabotage that light worker's mission because they were like, "Hey, you were with us, now you're trying to be light. No, we're gonna, you're still with us, like a codependent gang member, like dark mafia family. They never let you go." So it's like, no, but you can, but you have to be almost like a lawyer with your approach, with like breaking the contracts and clearing out certain symbols and malware that'll show up when we're doing the work that represents certain skill sets, orientations you had in that life that are still being passed through you unconsciously, that you need to call up and like, no, I'm not going to be the progenitor of this continuing malware legacy. It's time for the anti-malware love solution.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's what you also do, is you assist with clearing these contracts, programs, and implants with these individuals. I don't want to pinpoint anybody specifically because
Sure.
we all have our different titles, I guess you could say, that we resonate with, or frequencies we resonate with. And so we are all on different contracts and missions. So that's why I put it that way.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah. No, and it's an important part of that bit of the bigger healing of, like, being fully accountable, and also not to so people don't get overly self-righteous in their stance either, and realizing, hey, because when I first discovered one of my back past infiltration lifetimes, I was a little bit shocked because I had this many years ago, and I was like, oh, well, of course, if you're a powerful warrior in light, oftentimes you're going to be a powerful person on the other side to balance it out, and also because there's infiltration desire, or you understand how slippery the slope is when if you have a traumatic death here, and and you want to take the group down, then oftentimes you maybe become part of that group in the next life, to balance out the equation, kind of like the abusee becoming the abuser, or vice versa, where you have that completion of that um, karmic balance, and reconciliation. of duality on its deepest level, and it's not pleasant always at all, because these things have shockwaves in time, and we've had to also work on stuff where certain negative ET groups were exploiting that principle and like trying to create structures in time to like loop people back to those dark lifetimes in a more aggressive way. So there was this period where we were working on that, where the contract releasing wasn't enough. It was coming back, and it took me a while to figure out. It was like just it was the beginning of last year, really, when this other kind of side project we developed was going on, because there were these negative time pipelines that another negative ET group from the Lupus constellation was creating, and they were like really trying to use people as like a neural network in time, and link them through almost like perverting the idea of simultaneity, or like quantum entanglement across time and space, so that the person was still linked directly to that dark lifetime. So if you didn't get rid of that pipeline structure, if you released the contract, it would just come back, because there was still this inherent architecture that was taking advantage of that previous disposition, and so that was a big, and I found that to be the case mainly for SSP people and people in the MyLab community, were the main clients I had that had those structures in them. Rarely did I find like the average starseed person having that intense of an entanglement going on, because usually the idiots in the programs want to take advantage of the negative infiltration, so that it feeds into, right, so it feeds into some of the defense contractors and MyLab programmers' ability to it helps them program the people that are in the projects better, because if they're already being sabotaged and displaced from part of their light heritage and being rooted to a negative heritage, and it's easier to kind of bifurcate them and segment, alter personalities, and assign them certain gifts and suppress other gifts, so it does all connect to some really crazy levels of like like blows me away how they even keep it all together, these different groups.
No, you're right. You're definitely right. And so, in the situation where a soul or being might have that experience as being in my lab or SSP, and for those who don't know about SSP, the Secret Space Program,
Oh yeah,
do
sorry.
you know, or I guess, can you explain or can you share, uh, how does one soul become contracted into that?
Yeah, I don't even know if I wouldn't say there's one answer for that one.
Right.
Because
Have
you
you
also
looked
have,
into it at all?
well, yeah, because when I'm tracking things, and you track certain themes also, which are part of the karmic, not just karmic, but also dharmic. Like we have bodhisattva vows, a lot of us took as well when we came to Star People. So it just depends what kind of bodhisattva vow you took. If it's like, if you're coming to be a healer or emanator light, or if you came to be a warrior, it's going to be a different kind of path you're kind of creating and attracting for yourself. And then if you have these infiltration lifetimes off world, or even on Earth, that might be in the past connected to something negative previously that you went through, um, that can also create a propensity that can attract some of these situations like the MyLab programs to you. So like, especially if you were involved, I mean, I've had, what I find common for the infiltration galactic lifetimes is that a person will usually be in a high level military position or intelligence position in that negative ET group, because that's where the juiciest information is that would be relevant, right, for higher light councils to understand. So I worked on a lot of people that were like either like colonels, lieutenant colonels, or generals in some of the highest dark ET groups, and so that gets really intense when you start seeing also a deeper bird's view eye of what's going on in those collectives through that person's storyline. But then if it's not resolved yet, and then when they incarnate here, those same groups are also involved in MyLab programs with the governments and with these intelligence agencies. So they'll be some of the first people that they're trying to put on the target list to be like, hey, this person was serving us before and now they're still wired in. And, maybe we'll add them to a list of people you want to keep an eye on, that, and then see if there are certain levels of opening or developmental function that are going on, or, IQ tests in school, or certain, spatial learning tests. I mean, I had one client years ago who was did some remote viewing work in the Air Force, and they had recruited her because of her version of an IQ test that was a spatial recognition kind of test that she scored high on, which was about your ability to visualize. And so that was something that was something like as a marker point. So they're different, and there are more advanced groups that also track people's not just their skill sets in school, but but also their auric field, their heritage on a DNA level, bloodline connections are relevant factors, and then also soul lineage connections could be also included in there as well. So for the more advanced Mila program organizations that are, really filtering out or scanning, and they're looking for different people that are, that are carriers of some of that momentum that could be the troublemakers in the frontier, that they want to try to keep people more in a certain limited bandwidth of evolution. They want to try to see who the rebels are, or potentially could create the love wave of evolution. So in many ways you can get put on this list, in that sense. But in terms of volunteering, yeah, it's a tough one, because there have also been times where there was karmic things going on where certain people in the dark lifetimes did some really evil stuff too, and this was kind of a way to pay off some of that karma, and to also pay light service to infiltrate into that organization. And there are other ones that didn't have that same kind of extreme deal going on, but they were still um, you know targeted because they showed up on the radar. Or there might have been, there's a lot of things that could go on. I'm even healing like some deeper programming of trauma and abuse you might have had in your life that was also open door for them to take advantage of. It also depends if you were taken as a child or if you were taken as an adult. I mean, a lot of people were taken when they were young, so that gets into a deeper history of the soul, having some awareness of that this could be a scenario. I do think our souls know that ahead of time, at least know that there's a possibility of it, fully, not whether they want to sign on to it or not, is a little questionable gray area. I mean, for me, I was taken more as an adult, so it was a little different angle there. Um, but either way, it's still, it still sucks and it's very traumatic, and but then we see certain themes that are replicated across time and space, and you start to see the bigger view, and that makes it more, at least more digestible, even if it's not about justifying, any of these violators that have done these horrible things to so many people, and us included. But at least it puts it in perspective, so we're not just stuck in that narrative of being a victim in that sense, but being able to transcend that, and so that would be shorter answer.
Right. And what about, I guess, what about the individuals or people who might see all ET beings as negative?
Oh no, that's equally ridiculous. Just like Stephen Greer on the other side saying that all ETs are positive. I'm like, Jesus Christ, and there's so much disinformation out there going on deliberately, as well as sabotage on many fronts, especially in these communities. I mean, and there's such a co-organized effort. I mean, you've seen that even with the UFO disclosure stuff going on a bigger scale, like with David Grush in the congressional hearings last year, and with the new can't remember that new Colonel guy that came out recently. Was it Colonel Nell or Kell or something? There are different people that are white hats that are trying to come out to kind of release some more information in drip stages, and you're still such a coordinated effort to suppress that, because of that dark marriage between the defense contractors and the intel community and the military at a very high level. There's been a lot of that disinformation that goes back to Eisenhower days of MJ-12 and like the formation of that original Majestic 12 organization that was designed to oversee all the UFO information. And they've been popping up more for me as well. Fortunately, unfortunately, I've had to clear out some heavy shit that they were throwing at me, and subgroups within MJ-12 that are also trying to infiltrate and regulate and go after certain people in the field. But that's maybe a little side note. Put that on a point of reference that we can go more into. No, I mean, I wouldn't be here if there wasn't positive ETs. And the point of being a starseed is that you are, inherently from a higher dimensional evolved planet. And considering that there's hundreds of millions of us, that are here, I would say, that we definitely outnumber the dark. It's just that a lot of times the dark has been more organized down here than light has in terms of the infrastructure and infiltration campaigns and setting the stage for their little cronies, So the positive ETs, I mean, they come in every day for me when I'm working with a client. So that's one of the first things I look for is, what is that person's heritage, or not just one, because like you said, we're rainbow beings with very diverse backgrounds on a galactic, cosmic, universal, multi-universal level. But there are certainly relevant, pertinent ones, and there certainly are more demographics that come from, a smaller number of star systems that do have a larger presence here than other ones. And then you'll find other star seeds that are coming from other planetary groups where they're a minority in terms of their lineage here. So like there's a lot of people who have Pleiadian lineage, a lot of people from Arcturus, a lot of people from Sirius A, a lot of Andromedans that are here now. So, but then you find other more obscure ones that get, I would also fascinated to look into those. But either way, the point is that we're like the front line of the ground crew, right, of our positive galactic alliances that we come from. And part of it's building a bridge of communication back to our part of our soul so that our mind, body, heart, soul can link up again to that that angle of receptivity that allows us to receive that clear transmission, right, from say the Pleiades or Andromeda. And so this process is where we build like these shamanic bridges of light into our field, in our medicine wheel, in our inner castle, in our temple, so that there's what we call like a star heart bridge, more of a place open in your auric field where you can receive more love from higher cosmic sources of love and light that are wanting to help us evolve and ascend. And so that's when, there's been so many efforts to create a blockade around the earth to try to limit the good guys from coming into the level that they could come into. And so we're like reawakening a lot of these points so that there can be more stronger architecture of a relay system, because the negative groups have been doing the same thing. They've been building these dark relay systems from their home worlds to try to infiltrate and mess up things here. So we need to do the same thing on the light side, because the light groups are like, it's like having all these different armies in different directions of love and light that are waiting to come in, but sometimes the drawbridge is too up, the gates close, or or there's stuff in the moat that's blocking people's awareness of that path even being there, and obscuring that. And people think they're just alone in this castle of Gaia and forgot that every kingdom has a whole roadways that go out to other kingdoms, on both sides of the fence, and that we need to kind of clear out the obstructions that have inhibited our view of that possible new, an ancient, lineage to return to us, so that's why we always call them in. And we use the word star heart a lot in that context, and it has to do with that evolution of the heart chakra, both in the heart and in the auric field. That's like a diamond shape, and that allows us to receive more rays of light through the facets of that diamond into the heart chakra. So usually when I call in the beings, I'll always address them first with the word star heart in front of it as a kind of like upgraded, like lingo. And so, and also for the Andromedans, the phrase, one of the groups there we always call in are called the Andromedan Star Heart Infinity Defense League, Andromedan Starheart Infinity Defense League, the first ones that always want to show up. And so that's a nice broader term that they refer to themselves, because there's a lot of Andromedans that are here in the Milky Way from many different planets in the Andromedan galaxy that have formed this alliance to help us evolve and get rid of the scourges of different dark threats, everything from the alien AI to the different ET groups. They're the frontline warriors right now to really help us in our upcoming battles and clearing out of these dark groups. So I say it's very important. We always call on them as well, and the group from Saturn also comes in a lot. And in the Ra books, Saturn is like the local United Nations for the Confederation of Planets in service to the one infinite creator, which I would say 100%. There's been a lot of back talk, a lot of distortion around the planet that have been spread through a lot of disinformation and a lot of dark occultists as well, where because you have shadow astrology at play as well, right, where every planet has a higher octave and lower octave expression. And on the astral plane around our planet, there's shadow versions of a lot of these realms that sometimes people confuse as being the actual planet, but it's actually just a shadow reflection on an inner plane level that these dark adepts have created to try to sabotage people's consciousness from actually communicating with the actual realm outside that bubble of the earth. And then they try to trick people like, hey, this is really, it's the black cube of Saturn. No, it's not. Fucking Saturn has nothing to do with the black cube. Stop this already. Like, it pisses me off so much. I get charged because there's so many, because what the dark is trying to do is they're also trying to sabotage light workers by giving them fear in places where there shouldn't be fear. There shouldn't be fear to begin with, but they're giving disinformation about sources of negativity that are not at all connected with the negativity. And meanwhile, the real players are running amok because no one's calling them out in the real sense. They're only blaming the reptilians for everything, or one or two groups, and saying, no, there's 20 different groups that are working, at least I've tracked, that are doing stuff here. So it's not just, there's certainly certain big players like the negative, like Nordic ETs and the negative Serpent Apophis ET group. They're big players. They're working on their own dark timeline alien invasion scenario, because just a few months ago they actually did invade another timeline, and so they're trying to make a bridge here. And there's a lot of defense contractors working with that, and a lot of these different secret time bureaus that different defense contractors have that are also working to try to push that narrative. But wherever I look, it's like either Negative Nordic Apophis or the Set group from Dark Orion. They're trying to push their negative invasion timeline. And then you have, one or two smaller ones from the Baal group, we call it, which is more connected with the Russia-Ukraine situation. And then you have the Nazi, Fifth Reich group trying to come in. So these are like, they're really trying to put dark vectors of pressure, because there is so much like that is trying to come in to graduate the earth and graduate us. But these guys are really desperate to try to pull the earth into the shadow empire. And it's like, no, we're not going that route, but they really are here for for their grand finale, which is a larger, bigger campaign that they're trying to plan. And I know that's a longer story to go into, but point is, when it came to our optimal time, I'm like, no, there's plenty of assistance, but we have to be cognizant and open to not block the good ones either. So back to Saturn. So there's one group there we call the Saturn Starheart Emissaries. It's more broader terms, Saturn Star Emissaries. Another group that we call the Saturn Starheart Infinity Love Light Orb teams. They basically bring in these mini versions of Saturn to look like little orbs, different size light orbs of Saturn, like a holographic light bubble of Saturn, that they'll use that construct. Think of like soap bubbles, but they'll flood a whole area with these mini rainbow little Saturn love light orbs to try to help restructure, repave, and create a conduit so that they can beam more energy directly from the higher dimensional realms of Saturn into that location. So they come in all the time with the Andromedans to help us when we do the intervention work. So there's a deep alliance between like true Kronos, true Father Saturn that's positive, not this fake Black Sun version. That's just set propaganda, and these other dark ET groups that all worship the Black Sun. And so they were like, hey, let's try to spit in the face of one of Earth's greatest allies and make it seem like it's it's bad, so that we can throw people off our scent. So and because there are certain Kabbalistic principles, astrological, with Saturn relating to structure and Capricorn and the tree of life with the Divine Mother, and there's first a black color with that. They try to pollute that and create this negative cube aspect of it, or shadow version of time, and say, no, Saturn should help us evolve our relationship and heal time. The negative ETs are working with messing up time along with our governments and different subgroups that have time technology manipulations. So they're the ones that are screwing up the timelines, not the Saturn group. This is something, because I run across these articles sometimes and people are like panicking. I'm like, oh my God, stop. No, you don't. It's like really trying to like almost like scare people, light workers, so that they don't know who to trust anymore. Or they'll say, certain archangels are actually the fallen ones. I'm like, stop. Now you're getting like Christian propaganda onto the true, lineage of mystical Judaism and Christianity and other areas that gotten distorted by the negative ET groups infiltrating those religions, and now they're trying to like add a pollutant layer with certain new age or conspiracy people that have kind of went awry and are trying to label these positive, like Archangel Michael and Gabriel. These are real positive beings. They're not negative, but there's stuff out there that I've seen, and I'm like, oh my God, what is all this propaganda now? And like where there's all this contamination of where they're really trying to sabotage all of our resources and make and have our compass go a completely different direction. That's kind of a little different direction I wanted to go into, but I think it's important to mention that, because these are like filters, of discernment, and it's like, well, when you discover your own chakra system, work with that, your own tree of life, establish your own rapport with who your soul is. Your soul and your higher self can give you a clearer navigating lens of perception to cut through the bullshit basically that's around you as well. And so for me, it's not like these angels are a reflection of part of me as well. It's all holographic with this divine oneness that is implicitly present right within the totality of oneness that encompasses everything, as well as in all the rainbow diversity that the creator has made manifests in all these different realms. And it's just that there's a lot of beings that took that principle of free will and veil of separation and ran amok with it, and want to make vision. They want to make reality in their own creation in a negative way, and block us from seeing that there are divine beings of love and light that the creator has manifested for us that are here to help us, and so as opposed to cursing them or saying that they're negatives. And of course there are, I deal with clearing out demons all the time from people. That's not what I'm want people to misinterpret what I'm saying, but you don't want to mix up, the archangel for a dark demon. So they're very different, opposite sides of the fence. And that's the thing too. Some of these negative ET planets are really the source for some of these higher demonic forces, because they work with that energy, and it's inherent in the environment on a quantum level of that planet. It provides a school for the negative beings that chose a negative path to explore that, right, to its fullest extent. So their environment is inherently embodying separation and competition and control, and all the different vices, where that's not where we're headed, but they're trying to overlay that here. And that brings me maybe to the next thing to look up, because there's been a lot of new things going on with the chemtrails that we noticed since the last eclipse that have affected a lot of people's sinuses, and people think it's just allergies. And well, no, sometimes it's the pollen getting infected by the chemtrails that are making it more accessible. But what I discovered just literally very recently was that there were some elements being added to the chemtrails from the planet Mars, and the planet Mars, was like a human-like civilization that had gotten self-destroyed, as well as in negative infiltration by many ET groups a long time ago. And so what I saw was that the contractor Raytheon is involved with this specifically, where they had mined certain certain elements, like iron specifically was one of them, was like iron, titanium, zirconium, and what was the other one? I saw four that were coming up first. But iron was really important because iron is magnetic, right? It can be magnetic. And so it's holding Akashic record information of the Mars civilization, of the old death destruction cycle in it. So they're literally trying to use that as a harmonic dead weight to try to lower people's vibration, and try to loop us back energetically, because it works with other things that are happening simultaneously, where there's other technologies that are trying to create like energetic chains to our past so that we can't move forward in time that we're supposed to. So we're also working on some projects with that to dismantle some of those technologies with the higher ups. But it's just a lot, because it's all happening simultaneously. It's been going on for a while. So Archangel Raziel wanted to be called in as well. No, I'm mixing up now. No, so Archangel Camiel from Mars. Archangel Camiel wants to help clear out that negative iron, so he's a good one to work with. And Archangel Michael as well, to clear some of the other heavier elements that are being included in that spray. But I was like, that's like a new spin. I don't know how widespread that is. I think maybe it's more US based at the moment. And then they're also activating some more of the nanobots and people that had received the jab, so to speak, where the nanobots, which I've discussed before, maybe in other podcasts, how they're relaying directly to the Defense Intelligence Agency. And so the DIA is the main group in charge, one of the big groups in charge of monitoring people that have the nanobots that are active and relaying information, etc. And they just seem to be activating a new phase very recently that I'm seeing, at least here in New York, and I think in LA as well, where it's become very uncomfortable to be in larger crowds over here the past few weeks. And we're like, what is going on? And a few clients in Manhattan that had like a neuropathy, extra sensitivity, which getting a lot of pain in parts of the body, and we're tracking it. That's how I first saw it. I'm like, oh, it's coming from all these nanobots, and different people are being activated to cross chatter with each other. So if they're next to each other, the nanobots are communicating with other people that are nearby, and via the DIA adding this other layer of programming, and it's creating a larger coherent background noise or background signal that is designed for different purposes, like blocking people's connection to the higher realms. It's creating more of an obedience kind of mind control reinforcement stance, but it's also preparing them for something bigger, which I haven't seen yet exactly what that is. And Archangel Raziel, who's connected with Divine Father in the Tree of Life, Divine Wisdom, with mystery school teachings on a positive level. Raziel and the Ophanim, his angels are the Ophanim. They're the angels of the vortexes, of the wheels of time, to calibrate to the divine. So they want to come in to help expand your field so that you can call on them to say, I don't consent to any nanobot DIA, background noise field. I'm not here to be part of that shadow corralling, of mass planetary, mind control desires anymore, and have them create a bigger orb of light that pushes out that lower bandwidth so you can be at a higher frequency. So that's just more very recent intel that we're discovering. We're like just making me, it's very disconcerting, because I'm like, all these things are happening simultaneously, and then there's stuff going on with the oceans too. We have to do more work on that aside from the Dagon stuff. There's upcoming work where Father Earth needs more support, the counterbalance of Earth Mother, and we did work on that on him a few times, several times in the past few years, not in a while though. But again, it's a similar idea where there are sacred sites that are connected to both the masculine and feminine side of Mother, Father Earth. And his name was Geb in the Egyptian system. So we call it like more like planetary Geb healing, where there were certain vortexes for Father Earth that had been misaligned by the dark groups to reinforce the shadow male, kind of lower Mars introduction. I just realized I went out for a whole little tirade there.
No, I really like that. If you could touch base on the planetary Geb healing, that would be a little bit more interesting to learn more about, because the sacred sites are important. They are mostly dormant or unused at this point in time. And yes, we go and visit them, but I don't think they're being utilized for what they were intended for from the very beginning. And so just like those sites are asleep, we're also asleep. And so as we wake up, I think these sites are going to start waking up and becoming more active. And so how can we learn more about our connection to these sites?
I mean, for me also, it's everything is expanded like exponentially in terms of finding sacred sites locally, and not just the bigger ones that have been documented and are more obvious, been written about, but because the planet's undergoing such a transformation from a planetary core level out, um, she's also releasing a lot. Gaia Pachamama is also releasing a lot more energy from her core that's going out in a lot of different directions, like more like a radial pattern, like a starburst. Because really, in this real core of the Earth, there's a super dense plasma ball there. That's like Gaia's mini sun, if you want to call it that, aside from the larger um, crystalline and like iron, different elements that are around it. But there is that plasma core, and there are certain scientists that are talking about how there is fusion going on inside the core of the Earth, and it's not just radioactivity giving a Gaia heat energy. It's actual plasma, dense plasma, and that's for me that's an important thing too, because it gets in deeper when you're viewing Gaia's deep core and you go past the more the crystalline and like magnetic overlay, you'll see this bright light that's in the center there. And it's literally a plasma sphere. It's we have a geometry to it because it's really compressed. There was a few different scientists talking about it. One in Germany, Professor Meyl, Meyl. He wrote a book on like scalar wave physics, one of the only mainstream professors over there, talking about some of the secret technologies and these alternative waves, that Tesla originally talked about, that like our body produces, and how our DNA makes these scalar waves, not just the normal electromagnetic transverse waves. He did some papers on it as well, this professor. But anyway, he's one of the proponents of like how like neutrinos are also going into the Earth and being absorbed by the Earth and are part of the catalyst for this planetary fusion that's going on. And we've seen that this period now that we're going through, that there was like a large halo, like a halo around Gaia's core, like a toroidal field structure that had been interfered with a lot, and it was part of what was blocking humanity's heart from properly opening up. And so they're saying through next month, between now and to July was going to be a point where all these negative kind of structures that were impinging on her halo around her core were going to be cleared out. And so this is a major time to really also help our own heart chakra evolve to be able to be a receptacle for more sun energy, like Gaia's inner sun, as well as the outer sun coming to us and activating our spiritual sun and our heart chakra. This is part of the three-way exchange that's critical for our whole growth in DNA and awakening on a planetary level. So as part of that, there are like these different pillars of light that Gaia is evoking, that she's kind of shooting out from her core, and then also positive galactic beings like the Andromedans. We start working on that in January with them, where they were starting to activate these Andromedan star heart light pillars at certain locations. But there's going to be a lot of groups activating a lot of these pillars of light all around, and some people are taking pictures, and you see these atmospheric phenomenon of light pillars that are also part of that. But part of me mentioned as that this is expanding the idea that wherever we're able to really anchor love, is going to become a sacred site in that sense, and that we can really have this grounding of these higher star heart medicine circles that we can call in from the positive beings and have it anchored, and they can bring in their higher crystal structures and plant it in the earth at those locations to really sprout more of this kind of like wellspring opening, like a geyser, so that deeper kingdoms inside the earth can then be connected to higher kingdoms that are coming in from upper world and be expressed in middle world, where we're living at in our reality. So It's obviously amplified when you do go to sites that are more sacred in the sense of also where people have done a lot of ritual there for centuries or millennia, where there's higher content of crystal that is in the ground, or higher magnetic or higher metals in the ground that oftentimes create either a magnetic or gravitational anomaly in areas. Points that you have that are part of the sacred geometry, like I mentioned with Richard Hoagland about like the 19.5 degrees, but also other points that have, that represent, like you put an octahedron around the earth, or the way the Russians back during Cold War, they had put like a dodecahedron and mapped out the dodecahedral grids. And then the US built a bunch of bases, that were like subsets of these higher geometries. You find many times they're being built. There many times, if you were to map it out, you'll see that there are bases at all these locations, either that are from the natural geometry that's been formed in the ground. Even Dutch Sense, who was great, guy on YouTube, who talks a lot about the best like earthquake predictor and was exposing a lot about the weather warfare with the next radar systems. He got into some of the people that were was it alien scientist guy and some other people, and they did some really cool coverage of looking at larger sacred geometry, like structures, like kind of like star forts from people they're talking about, like from the Tartaria stuff, but these natural formations in the earth that have a sacred geometry to them, that he's mapped out parts across the US where there are different bases and facilities that are there, So there's different angles or approach, like both physical geometry that holds space because of its positioning and angle, and then the idea of, say, the chakras in the body versus on the chakras of the earth. But I find also tree of life points where, on the earth as well. But I find that, there's just a lot more places opening up. So I don't, it's nice to go physically to certain sacred sites to be an anchor there when you feel called to. But it's not a necessity, I find, because like I'm in the middle of freaking Brooklyn. We anchor energy, but in Manhattan, we go to like the obelisk in Central Park, which was original pillar from Egypt, and brought over here by the Freemasons originally, late 1800s. And it's a major antenna, one of the first pillars, only one of two in the world that were the original obelisks that marked the entrance to the city of the sun in Heliopolis. And so I've been doing work there for like over 20 years at that location. During the warm season, we do the outdoor stuff in addition to the Zoom. But it took us a couple of years to clear it because a lot of negative groups were using it and trying to pollute and use it as an artery access point to the global grid, because it's this position on major ley lines that are perched. And so, if you do find certain spots that are like amplifiers of intention where you can be as a loudspeaker into the collective more, it's even more important that we become more like caretakers and stewards to, work with it. And I think so many places like Sedona is great, but there's been too much building into the vortexes themselves that weren't supposed to have so much population there, ends up taking away from some of the power and diluting it and contaminating certain areas. So we need to but I always love Bell Rock, because for me, Bell Rock is one of the sacred vortexes out there. That's a structure internally inside it where they wanted to call it what do they want to higher level. When I saw some of the positive ETs there years ago, it was like Starheart, like medicine rock, they wanted to call it. It was like, it's where they was seeing like a council of higher light beings that can beam energy into the heart of Bell Rock, and being as an anchor point to radiate love out. So I think part of it's also finding what's around you, right? First and foremost. And if you want to travel, finding where you're pulled to. I think that's just a matter of both listening, asking. A lot of times I'll dream and I'm going out of body so many times to other sacred sites because I'm not there always physically, and we're doing work or tapping into stuff happening there, and then we come back in. So even putting that in permission slip to yourself before you go to sleep, to ask your guides and angels, hey, if you need to get like a vortex zap or hold space, or get other beings are doing the same thing. A lot of us are gathering and doing stuff on the other side while we sleep and don't always remember all the details, but part of it starts with putting the intention out, because there is a lot of activity we're doing out there, and there's also a lot of stuff where negative groups are trying to stop people from doing, or trying to create clamps, almost like a dark version of like border patrol, around certain areas where they're trying to lower people's vibrations so that we're not properly going out of body to where we're supposed to be going or could be going. So that's part of also what we need to do, stuff like calling in the angels before you go to sleep, or your teams, to create a bubble around your bed and create a clear transit pathway for you to go to where you want to go to, or where your higher self could be guiding you to, if you give it permission to assist you. So there's a lot of roundabouts here on this topic with that. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
Just,
no, that's
yeah.
perfect to kind of redirect it into how we can, I guess, quote unquote, manage or redirect these old programmings, which is something I'm working on as well, is reprogramming the negative thought forms from all timelines, not just this timeline or what we're currently
Mm.
going through, but we're actually rolling through hundreds and thousands of years of detoxing. And
Yeah.
so it's really heavy, and too bad we can't just go to the gym once and it's all taken care of, but like, let's talk about how we can identify those patterns and programs within ourselves and how we can overcome that, because the goal is to redirect and overcome this spiritual war, which is huge right now. And
Yeah.
so I think it's only going to get worse before it gets better, but
Sure.
I
Sure.
really
Yeah.
think we have to deep dive in further within ourselves to to start reprogramming so that that can start taking effect on the outside as well. So.
Yeah, no, that's very, very important, especially with the new sun energies coming in and a more direct intervention by the solar logos and solar light beings that want to help us evolve. And they're coming in to help clear out stuff in the body of Gaia, because the sun is a critical part of our transformation personally and collectively. And a lot of these methodologies and chemtrails and things like that are trying to, it's all being designed to interfere with our evolution and our DNA and from properly growing, so it's important to realize also that some of the weather warfare is not, aside from ungrounding people to feel safe in the earth and geopolitical reasons, is also trying to interfere with people's abilities to properly ground the sun energy electromagnetically in our bodies. So for me, being in nature and doing, starting at basics is very important to try to recenter and yourself as a lightning rod tuning fork to the 4 directions, 8 directions, sun, center of earth, get that basic coordinate system grounded, and so you can really expand in your own natural volume, and realizing that your physical body has a certain volume, but then your auric field has a certain volume. And so it's being more cognizant of meditating on those some more subtler orbital spaces that our auric body fills, and be like, okay, where if you're not filling it, maybe something else is trying to fill it, or something else is imposing on or pushing in it, or why is your film being more collapsed in as opposed to expanded out. So different things to contemplate on it. And it may also vary if you're living in a city versus more rural area. Oftentimes the field is more expanded in a rural area than is an urban, instead of a necessity of dealing with all the orbital trash around you for having so many people and technology projections alone. So, but we get sometimes in these comfort zones, we have to re-identify and push through so that we're not just caught in that pattern or that loop that may be pertinent for a certain time but may not relevant for now. So being spontaneous, always connecting back to the inner child, with the inner child healing, and being in that joy state is so important, because all these things are trying to take us out of that. So being simple in that regards of like finding what brings you passion is very important at this time. Connecting with the healthy nature as wherever you could find it is important. And also when we're doing the group work, this is all part of what we're doing. It is because so many times there will be pains in our bodies, but even though it's are feeling weird pressures, and then when we do the group, we're like, oh my God, this is the root of that friggin' pain or pressure was this collective friggin', dark acupuncture, dark timeline manipulation that's going on, that's creating all sorts of background stress in people's fields and bodies, mental, emotional, spiritual health, physical health being affected by it. So when we clear through a layer of that, we feel like, oh my God, this is the openness, this is the expansion that we were being denied because of some idiot's desire to friggin' conquest, and create their hegemonic goals, friggin' quantum colonization is what I also call it, that they're trying to do. And it's like, no, you can't colonize my quantum realm, you assholes. It's like, you can't hyperspatially occupy me. That's like, that's like saying these are all sovereign spaces that we need to fill up with our own self. Otherwise, they're going to be something else that wants to fill it up for us. And oftentimes it's not what we want. So part of that
Right.
recognition is being accountable for your own shadow, knowing your own biases, your own feelings, what is normally you versus something that is projecting it onto you, and as opposed to, in addition to baggage you're carrying from the past, that needs to be put up. Doing basic chakra meditations, for me in the sun is very important as well, where you're breathing in the sunlight into each chakra and creating a circulation between the sun, your body, and the core of the earth, and looping it back up to the sun. So it's kind of like a toroidal ring, where you step into that waterfall of light coming from the sun down your body into the earth's core, and then the earth's core is shooting it up like a geyser back up to the sun, and it loops back. So much of it is about us reintroducing ourselves to what is already inherent in nature that we've been blinded from seeing was there, and saying, wait a minute, why are we out of tune with this natural harmonic exchange that's going on between the friggin' local creator that's shining through our sun and our physical, support creator of Gaia, Mother, Father, Earth, Geb energy. There's all this isolation and division that's been going on, and competition and control. And it's like, let's get back into that simple flow first, and then we can start to reclaim more spaces that we may not be aware of until we have that initial new viewpoint, new leveraging. So that's one thing where I would also breathe in, and I would turn my back into the sun as part of the part two, and breathe in the light of the sun to the back of the chakras, and then complete the circle and breathe it back again, both as individual beams charging up the chakras, and then as that kind of circulatory toroidal field. And you'll feel a lot more energy coming in, things to be pushed up just from that simple exercise. And if you do it breathing, more, visualization more, put some maybe chakra music on with that, it can turn into a whole simple but powerful process to like redefine. And of course, you may run into some complications where you may start seeing other grids that are not supposed to be there, that are trying to interfere with your connection with the sun or with the earth. And then you may need to call more assistance to kind of open up a hole in that, like, I'd say like a fence opening up a hole in that grid, and a negative grid. So you can be like, all right, that's you can't block my sight, and we don't consent to this harmonic containment fields that these groups have been creating. But that's also why we do the group work, so we can help each other and, be like, okay, what's on the roster now this week, or every 2 weeks, this for the new moon, full moon. But then the special groups I do, we have stuff going on over the next couple of weeks that are more like this Earth Father Geb ocean healing work. We're going to do that. Very soon, not the Sunday, following Sunday. Then there's work against the set group, or the negative set group. They've also put a negative veil around the earth, like a dark time veil that they're trying to use to link up to their negative timelines. And also some stuff they've put in Israel that's tied into them harvesting death energy over there to support their dark timeline. Anywhere there's conflict and war and death going on, you're going to find negative beings, inner plane, outer plane, that are there harvesting energy and trying to use it for their agenda. And that goes into a whole other storyline of exopolitics and who's involved with what kind of deals are going on with certain sub factions in these different governments and military groups, secret societies that are part of the larger, bigger reason of why some of these things occur beyond just the religious political stuff that we hear about. There's a whole other view of that. But anyway, that's feels like it's going. How are we doing with time here? I wasn't sure what you're.
No, yeah, we're doing really good on
Okay.
time. So it's 2:36 now.
Yeah.
So
Good
we have like 10 or 15 minutes left if you want.
Sure.
Keep going.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. Also make sure, so make sure I cover topics without going too far off track.
Yeah, no, I think the topics that we're covering are really important to look at. And even if we're not going too far into it's still really good to cover the topic, because it's something we don't really talk about much.
Yeah.
It's there, we know it's true, but it's just something that we don't discuss enough. And so even with my own healing, I've discovered different timelines that carry on through this timeline. So as we continue to just do the work, the inner work, the shadow work, which is somewhat never ending, it seems.
I know it seems like that sometimes, right?
Yeah, it's just a hamster wheel, and that's why we're here, is to do the work. And so it's kind of an honor and blessing to also be here, to take the opportunity to work through these grid lines and the grid work with not just the earth, but the collective, as you mentioned. And I do think the group work is really important, because me being so sensitive and highly sensitive, I am a conduit that just picks up stuff from the entire collective. And there are days where I just want to go and scream, or I want to go cry, or I'm just, grieving, because it's so much bigger
Yeah.
than me or what I've personally experienced. It's just a flood, it's letting the dam wall down, literally, and you just feel everything. So there are people who are here to specifically work on a collective level, which is absolutely fascinating. And I love that the people that are here to do that work, they're following through with it. And so I think it's really important to cover the topics to show that we are not alone and there
Yeah,
are other individuals out there who are doing this work. And it's it's important, it's special, you know, we are misunderstood, you know, it's which is also put out there
yeah,
a lot, but I think it really circles back down to the mission work and how important this is on a grand scale. So I think
absolutely.
topics that we've covered are really important.
And be aware of for sure. And it's that, yeah, like I said, like too, when you turn over the rocks, you start seeing other creepy things that were there, we weren't really sure were there, and be able to bring it to light, you know. And there was that one group also I feel like pulled to mention that's also that's been another pain in our butt, so to speak, on different levels. There's been a negative group from the constellation Scorpio, but specifically from the tail of Scorpio. There are planets, a planet there that's the original home of the negative scorpion kings in ancient Egypt. Makes you think about that old Scorpion movie, or Scorpion King movie, or was it with The Rock or something years ago? But no, there was ancient lineage there that was way back. And I mean, there's a positive Scorpio energy that comes more from Antares, the heart of Scorpio, like Serket, the Scorpion goddess that was one who supported Isis in her resurrection process of Osiris. And there is a beautiful positivity group that's by the Antarian sector. But this is a group by the tail, and they're called the spelled Nemri, Nemri. This being specific, they're a negative group called the Nemri, and they've also been coming in more aggressively since December. They were coming in with two other groups that I didn't know about until then when I got first hit, and I got sick. I was like, what is going on here? They were also working on modifying some of the recent it's going back, I said, back in the November, December timeframe, when there was the other variant, or flu thing going around, that was it was being modified by this group to include a astral kind of energetic alien parasite that they were trying to spread to different people, to try to hack into people's quantum fields and time fields, to try to like rewrite people and move them into negative timeline, which was like, we were horrified, like this is the most gross violation I've seen in a long time. So like it was a massive battle going on a higher level against this group, and I was like, you guys are out of freaking control. So there was group work we did also to clear out some of their darker grids. But there's they have some bases out in the Midwest that are being hosted by Northrop Grumman and L3 Harris out in Nebraska and Oklahoma, and also a smaller facility in the Vegas area that we've tracked from people. And there was one in the Middle East we saw from a client that was out in Jordan, with the Jordan government having a deal with this group. Really movie scene, right? Desert stuff. All Scorpion Kings. They're a humanoid 4D group, but they really work a lot with the Scorpion archetype. So like the leader of that Nemri group, he's like a black Scorpion King, and his Dark Queen is like a red Scorpion Queen. And they but they really get off on the symbolism, like this black sun, black Scorpion, kind of projections that they use it magically, and like the venom and stuff is like a black goo variant and stuff. And so really, it's like bad Halloween characters, but and then there was one in Austria we have seen also recently. I was working with a client in Europe where the Austrian government was working with them as well, or some Illuminati family bloodlines. There's a lot of creepy facilities in Switzerland and Austria because of the Illuminati families having so many bases. There are ancient dark bloodlines that have had deals with so many nefarious groups that are still active. So yeah, it's not just about the U.S. There's safe stuff going on globally, but definitely is a higher preponderance in the U.S. and Europe for sure. I mean, China has their own shenanigans going on with some of these groups as well. But how do we get to that? Yeah, so this memory. If there was something else I'm forgetting about them. Yeah, just bring awareness, to it, so we can, be like, we don't, being more, again, because half the battle is awareness, so that we don't consent. Boils down to us reclaiming our sovereignty daily, and saying we don't consent to any trade deals that our defense contractors, military industrial complex groups governments made with these groups, and that we don't consent to being commodified. So just as a daily reinforcement for your angels and guides to be like, look, there's any cords or implants to me from any of these creepy negativity groups, I don't consent to giving my life force energy or my elemental energy to build any of their technologies with. I don't want to be part of any quantum entangled technologies, that are remotely trying to access people and hack our fields. So it's putting that boundary same way you would when you're walking into a neighborhood. You don't, maybe want to be a little extra puffing your field or being more conscious of what's around you, or, it's the same idea, and giving permission for your guides and angels and higher self to and rectify it. And if there's something that's deeper that needs to be looked at within that domain, to help show you that, and that's again part of what I also do with the individual work, is that specifically. But a lot of the angels, are involved in helping us to cut these cords, that are put in certain chakra areas. So I find also, or Kabbalistically, if you know the tree of life, those angels will work with those points as well. But if there's something deeper, you may need to do a deeper dive, into that area.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about more of your work before we go. Let's cover what you can help people with, use your services. Because I have had a couple of sessions with you, and they are very beneficial to identify what's going on within your blueprint structure, what kind of patterns, negative imprints, implants, any reprogramming anybody wants to do. So let's share what you do.
You're so cute, yeah.
I know it's a whole nother topic, but it actually, it's an umbrella of.
It is an umbrella.
Of what we've talked about today, because you are able to assist in clearing these timelines and structures and blueprints and implants. And so let's cover that.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely covers a lot of area, and also that's also why we need to have group stuff. We tackled part of the bigger operations, obviously. It's a bit more about group mage work, in that regards. I mean, individually. So, I mean, and from the outside looking in the beginning, basic kind of looking in terms of a session wise, there's certain music I play in the background, certain world chant music from different traditions. It's more of I only play that music when I'm doing work because it helps put me in that space faster. And it's kind of like a cue to my guides and angels that, hey, it's session time. So, come closer, and then of course I light up candles. To me, working with the basic elements is very important, so like I'll have a lot of candles lit up when I'm working. I mean, 90% of my clients these days are on Zoom. I do house calls for people locally in New York, or they come here as well, but a lot of my clients are spread around, the country and other countries. So Zoom obviously is helpful for that, so I always say that the basic will do it in Zoom, unless you live in the New York area. I have a lot of crystals in my apartment, a lot of specific altar setups here with different stones as well that creates the field. So it's also something that isn't to me a prerequisite, not prerequisite, but I think everybody should have an altar in their home with basic things in it to help act as a grounding point for the angels and galactic beings to come in and radiate the energy into your space. It's to me, it's like the raw food of, of like, if you want to connect to any kind of spiritual work, start with some really basic things, even a couple of crystals, wine, picture of some deities or angels, some things that gives you a sense of connection to a larger God space presence, and reflection of the earth, having some, symbols like that represent that are burning incense for the, as well for the air, and the candles for the fire, and cup with water that you want to bless beforehand, and things like that have some of the crystals for the earth element, so that you're really honoring. Again, for me, having those things are more about a reflection of what's I discovered inside me. So I'm not giving power to these external objects. Those things are more like it's honoring my family of relations that are here in the physical form, that can act as a grounding point to open up that cone of perception to much larger realms that are coexisting. And so it's about, for me, removing the barriers of those obfuscations or obscuring things, structures, clearing out content that we may have. So in the beginning, I call on each archangel of each direction. But before I even work with the person, I do a pre-scan to just look for certain basic things, because since everyone's showing up with alien stuff in their fields, I want to know ahead of time what I'm dealing with. So I'll scan through a list of, whatever, 20, 25 different negative ET groups and see if any of them are involved with the person, and then go into like seeing, okay, are there cords or implants in the chakras and the tree life points and other points in the back. So like a pre-diagnostic kind of work I do, or, if there's certain, infiltration lifetimes the person had that we need to clear out, shadow past life stuff. I do all that before I even start with the person on the Zoom, just to make it easier for myself as well, make it more streamlined now than when it was years ago. Then other things come up as we do the work, so both my higher self, guides, angels will come in and we will cut and remove those negative structures. And then, also, for people that are in more intensive fields like the MyLab SSP, it's more of a multi-session necessity because you're going to deal with clones, you're going to deal with soul pieces that are in clones we need to retrieve. You're going to deal with different alter personas that need to be addressed, and both soul pieces that may be in clones or in heart code storage devices that are being used by different ET groups and defense contractors. You get dealing with more of the ritual abuse side, astral abduction stuff. There's a lot of categories there that go more into people than that with those needs. Say the average person, that may just be like one person that comes in, they had like pain in their stomach for on and off for 3 years and went to so many doctors, couldn't find out what's going on there. And the being I worked on one time was alien AI and some other dark past life, and her stomach slowly got better. She's like, what the hell? At 3 years I was suffering for this thing. And it was like, oh yeah, it's alien AI, and then your past negative past life power displacement. So things can be very physical of how they're showing up. Another one had headaches on and off for 2 years, and it was going on, and only took one session, and we cleared some stuff out that was related to that, and their headaches went away. So it can be also very practical in terms of like things that may be systemic for people that may not realize where the root is. Maybe something like that, and maybe that's all required, but then some people come back to me seasonal for like auric tune-ups, to deal with the things, or maybe a quicker, smaller one to clear out some interference going on, or. So there are different needs different people have, in terms of how deep the dive they want to go through, or as well, or if they're still on the list of attention in certain groups, that may require more, regular monitoring so we catch it and or nip certain things in the bud, as opposed to say some person that shows up for 1 or 2 times and that's it. So there's a wide range there, and then I also, after I do some work with somebody, I always recommend they did join some of the group work. I also record all the group sessions so people can hear that, because there's a lot of codings and information that come in the group work, not just to clearing out of the negative. There's a lot of blessings that come in to replace that are very unique and are co-created by the group that's involved, as well as people that listen later on. So those are like the weather reports, that kind of come out that we need to be aware of. And daily, or like regular lunar ecosystem management.
Definitely. Well, let's share with everybody how we can find you. And your
Oh yeah, so I'm also on YouTube. If you look up my name on my YouTube channel, and then if you click my playlist tab on my YouTube channel, there's a list of interviews, podcasts that are there. Most of them are there. Some are not. Some got taken down. But I'm on Facebook. I'm under my name. I'm on Instagram, which I really need to get on more, but I haven't been. But I am theoretically there, also under my name. Or I also, people can email me. That's at I'm sure she can include that in there. But it's a Psi Jumper, PSI Jumper at Gmail, PSI Jumper at gmail.com. And there's different lectures. I do different conventions as well, but I definitely need to go spread myself again on more along the larger scene. I give out my number too. I don't really care, as long as people text me, don't call, because I get a lot of spams, and I want to make sure I'm talking to first. So it's just for me like the texting polite, aspect. My number is 347-776-7965. 347-776-7965. And then we can, if you want to do a session, just matter of scheduling, usually, just a week or two ahead, because I'm usually booked a week or two ahead. I do them in the afternoon or evenings, usually average hour and a half, just so people know.
Yeah, I will definitely include your social media. So Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, phone number, and email for anybody.
Thank you, dear. Yeah, that's enough.
Yeah,
Not much else there. And there'll be some points where I'll be doing some more group grid work too over the coming years, so people can stay in contact with me for that. I definitely will, probably more so starting next year. And there'll be some spots we need to do some activations. One in the Caribbean for sure. One up in Alberta, up in Banff Springs, Canada, where there's a big Archangel Michael solar retreat there. It's a big artery for solar energy coming into the planet. It's one of the spots that's major. But anyway, little side note. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that sounds beautiful. We'll have to get the details and share those.
Yeah, once they form too. Exactly. Awesome. Thank you so much, Melanie.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
And it was great to converse with you today and share these topics and to cover much space. literally.
Yeah, a wide range of things. Right?
Yeah, so thank you so much. I'm gonna get all of your information in for everybody. And so if
Sure.
anyone's interested in connecting further with Stephen for a session or just for amazing conversations,
Exactly.
he's always
Yeah, I'm
doing,
very social. If you're in New York, I'll be a tour guide for you if you want to visit New York too.
yeah,
Show you
and
around some good spots.
definitely. And you're always
Nice.
doing great mission work and group work. And so that's something to also follow
Yes.
as
Yeah.
well. If you're remote
Yeah.
and
I
can't.
usually post event pages on Facebook, but obviously just think about when the new moon and full moon, that's going to be when I'm doing something. So just email me, message me, I'll send you the Zoom link, for that. So yeah.
Definitely. Well,
And
thank
and 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 all those group things are on donation basis, so that those are flexible. So if people have issues, don't worry about that. It's more about having the right people and integrity there present. That's important.
yes, thank you so much for
Awesome.
offering that space for everyone.
Definitely.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you again, Stephen, and
Yep.
thank you everybody for joining us today on Quantum Healing Today.